Modi is acting like a Hitler of South Asia.
This trade dispute with China has been going on for over a year, and to me, I'm running out of patience.
So, are you saying that pedophilia is a sexual orientation?
Hundreds of lawsuits alleging child sexual abuse were filed today in New York State against institutions including the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts of America. The flood of litigation started coming in at midnight when a year-long window created by the state's new Child Victims Act opened, allowing survivors to sue abusers and their associated institutions, regardless of how long it's been since they were abused.
We don't want to fight y'all.
A Swedish court found A$AP Rocky guilty of assault for a street fight in June. The rapper's been ordered to pay $1,300 in damages, but won't be spending any more time behind bars. Judges found the assault wasn't serious enough to warrant more jail time than the month he served. Canada's Federal Ethics Commissioner says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau violated conflict of interest rules by trying to pressure his former Attorney General to go easy on an oil company facing bribery charges. Jody Wilson-Raybould says she was demoted for refusing to drop her plans to prosecute SNC-Lavalin, which has 8,000 workers in Canada. Trudeau had said he was worried about their jobs, but now he'll be worried about votes. He faces re-election in October. Over the last 40 years, the average American worker's salary has grown by 12%, while CEOs have seen their compensation shoot up by 940%. That means for every dollar the average employee takes home, their boss rakes in $278, which doesn't seem like it's trickling down anytime soon.
In cities across Pakistan on Wednesday, tens of thousands of people celebrated 72 years of independence from Britain.
Go India! Go India! Go India!
Only, it was less of a celebration and more of an act of defiance against India and its flagrant move to take over Kashmir. Pakistan and India, which both have nuclear weapons, have fought 3 wars over Kashmir. And now there's a threat of war again, after India's Hindu nationalist government fulfilled a decades-long promise to revoke the constitutional provision that gave the country's only Muslim-majority state some autonomy. Article 370 allowed the part of Kashmir under India's control to have its own laws, flag, and constitution. And Parliament also scrapped another rule that blocked non-Kashmiris from buying land there. Both Islamabad and Delhi claim Kashmir in full, but the territory's been divided almost as long as India and Pakistan have been independent. In 1949, the UN brokered a ceasefire that split it in two along a so-called line of control. To try and stifle any violent reaction, India has put the region it controls on lockdown. The military patrols the streets and the internet's been blacked out. Here in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, people can still move freely, and they have no problem expressing their anger.
They are out of food, they are out of medicine, they are out of the fundamental needs now. These people deserve freedom. They are struggling for this from last 72 years.
What do you think of Prime Minister Modi?
I don't think about him, because he's not the man to think. He doesn't have values. He doesn't want Muslims. In whole India, he doesn't want Muslims to survive.
Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan flew to the Pakistan-administered Kashmiri capital Muzaffarabad on Wednesday to address politicians. He insists he wants a diplomatic solution. His administration has already booted out India's High Commissioner, halted trade, and called for an urgent UN meeting. He compared India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Adolf Hitler.
रूस के ऊपर अटैक कर रहा था तो उनको कह रहा था मैं तुम्हें कम्युनिज्म से आजाद करने आ रहा हूं.
Kashmir's Prime Minister on this side says it's an attempt to make Muslims a minority on the other side of Kashmir.
People will again they will rise up to this. The only result will be the mass murder of the people of Kashmir. This will not stop at the line of control or ceasefire line. This will spill over to Pakistan. When it will spill over to Pakistan, then it will spill over to India also.
We've already seen a lot of angry protests on this side, and the Pakistani side of Kashmir, by Kashmiris. Do you think that over the next coming days you could end up seeing some flashpoints?
Yes, if things go on, there is no other option that we will have to, the civilians have to march towards the line of control.
It's very dangerous to
Yes,
walk.
I have every right to cross this line of control. I will try, because one has to die a day. Why not to die on the, to help our brother in Kashmir to get, I'm to say, freedom from this Indian occupation.
So you and other Kashmiris are ready to die?
We will go. I am ready to die. I will die for our people. I will die for the nation, for the oppressed people of state of Jammu and Kashmir. Why not?
China's tariffs have deliberately targeted industries in states that supported Trump. That means farmers. In 2017, the second biggest market for their agricultural products was China. Since then, it's been buying 60% less, crushing prices for crops like soybeans. Farmers were already dealing with historic flooding and extreme heat. Last week, they got more bad news. China was canceling all purchases of American agricultural products over more tough talk from Trump. His administration has tried to soften their pain by doling out almost $25 billion in subsidies. Even so, many are struggling. Farmers in Iowa were happy to talk with us about business and how the trade wars hurt them. But they weren't quite ready to drop their support for Trump.
We have the richest soil really in the world here in Iowa, and usually the weather is good so that we can grow really good corn and soybean crops.
There's definitely a lot more that goes into corn and soybeans than what you would think. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. You've got to understand all of the inputs that you need. At the beginning of the year, you have to negotiate contracts and whatnot for land. You have to understand all these new seeds and whatnot, new hybrids, new varieties of seed. Everything's changing all the time.
We were able to produce on the average of about 215 bushel per acre yields was our production history last year, for 2018. Cost of production is different pretty much for every farmer.
This year it cost me, on my farm, about $560 to put in an acre of corn. So I need to have something more than $560 per acre if I'm going to make money.
Most of the corn that's grown in this area is going into an ethanol facility. A lot of the soybeans are going onto the river, down to the Gulf of Mexico, loaded up on barges and bigger vessels, and a lot of those are going into Eastern Asian markets like China.
The United States farmers always grow more than we can use domestically. So export markets are very important to farmers. That's kind of what I would call the gravy. That's the extra that we get. If we can't use it here, we'd like to sell it to somebody else and get rid of it, and then prices go up and we can make a little more money.
We have to understand where is the market going to be a year and a half out, and we have to be making our decisions based on that.
Well, tariffs are, I think, in the world of agriculture, something that most farmers don't look to in a positive light. And I've been farming here 4.5 decades to realize, and I've functioned through some scenarios where they used food as the go-between in a tariff conversation. Unfortunately, I think when you talk tariffs, we need to look at the bigger picture.
So what we've seen is, like, even looking at tariffs for metal and steel, that's impacting the price of farm equipment. It's impacting the price of grain bins, like behind me. So some of those big infrastructure and big capital investments, the tariffs are impacting that too. So it's hurting us on the price of what we're buying to farm and the amount of revenue that we're able to make on our crop also.
I don't like tariffs. They distort the market. And you can take your product that would normally be reasonably priced and you've just overpriced it, so nobody wants to buy it.
China choosing to go to South America or buy more out of Ukraine is definitely one of the biggest issues, biggest scares that we could have. We've been a super long-term ally for a long time. We need to do all that we can to make sure that we protect that.
I'll use an example. About 15 months ago, an Iowa farmer could sell soybeans at his local elevator for around $10 a bushel. Today, you can sell those same soybeans for around $7.75 a bushel. So that's a reduction of $2.25 a bushel. We're selling beans below our cost of production.
In essence of doing the right things, I think our goal is to stand behind our president, whether we agree with him or not, and move forward as a solidarity scenario.
I don't know if there's a breaking point. I am feeling a little bit worn out. I don't care for the tweets. I don't care. Go do business and don't tell people about it all the time on a tweet. This trade dispute, especially with China, has been going on for over a year. And to me, I'm running out of patience. I wish it was taken care of.
I think we definitely need to be able to get some deals worked out with China, with Canada and Mexico and whatnot. And we'll continue to play political games and whatnot to be able to get there. I think those things will hold off in the end, and I hope that as Americans, we can hold off longer than the Chinese can in some of those battles.
A sustainable trade deal would be to let's do away with the tariffs. Let's have free trade. We'll sell you what you need and we'll buy from you what we need. And do away with the tariffs. Let the market take care of it.
I wish people understood that, we generally don't like the fact that there are pedophiles either. Like, we didn't ask for this. It's something that a lot of people will be more comfortable ignoring, but when it's you, it's not really an option to ignore it.
This is David. He's known as a non-offending pedophile. Someone who has a romantic and sexual attraction to kids, but says he's never abused a child. He wants help, but getting it in the US is risky.
When I was figuring this stuff out about myself, I decided that I couldn't tell anybody because I was pretty certain that at best they would desert me and just I'd lose a friend or whatever, and at worst they'd tell absolutely everybody and I'd be
it'd be dangerous for you.
It would be dangerous.
We've never thought about non-offending pedophiles. We focused all of our resources on after-the-fact interventions. How do we punish? How do we surveil? How do we keep track of sex offenders? What we need are interventions that can target the vast majority of sex crimes that can be prevented.
Dr. Letourneau is one of few researchers in the U.S. focusing on preventive measures to help pedophiles. But getting them treatment is tough. Mandatory reporting laws in America require that therapists alert authorities when they suspect a pedophile is at risk of abusing a child.
If you are someone that has an attraction and you go to a therapist and you say, I have these attractions for young people, what could happen?
Any number of things could happen. Even if you've never offended, if you're sexually interested in children, you reach out to a therapist for help, they may decide that you still represent a threat and that their concerns meet the threshold for a mandatory report. I know of a child who's at the age of 15 disclosed to his school guidance counselor that he had sexual interest in young children and he wanted some help and support around that. He got kicked out of school, and they assumed, as many people do assume, that someone with sexual interest in children, that they cannot control themselves, that they will just reach out and grab the first child they see off the street and rape that child. And that's not true.
This is a PSA you're not likely to see in the U.S.
Do you like children? In ways you shouldn't? There is help.
The campaign was produced by Prevention Project Dunkelfeld, one of the only places in the world that offers therapy to pedophiles.
We do not have these mandatory port laws as you have in the United States.
Yes.
This is an obstacle for prevention work because nobody would show up.
Since 2005, about 10,000 people in Germany have reached out to Dunkelfeld for help.
Is this like conversion therapy? Are you trying to cure these people?
No, it's not possible to change sexual orientation. I never would try that.
So are you saying that pedophilia is a sexual orientation?
Exactly. We have a lot of sexual minorities, and this is all part of this huge variety. So nobody chooses this. And as long as he not would act out, it would be very, very inhuman to judge such a person. And I would always vote to integrate him in society.
Dr. Bauer estimates that 1% of the population is pedophilically inclined, and nearly all of them are men, but not all of them offend. Dunkelfeld's treated about 1,700 since it opened.
And what does this treatment look like?
It's a kind of cognitive behavioral treatment running to all the risky situations, and then we will train him to change his behavior in these situations. The other one would be pharmaceutical options. We can lower sexual urges with very effective drugs. So if it's...
Is that like chemical castration?
It's like chemical castration, yeah.
How many people have gone through this program and have not offended?
Nearly all of them.
How do you measure that?
By just giving the, taking the answers of them. It's subject.
Oh, so they tell you?
Yes.
Doctor, is that, if you're just relying on them to tell you that they didn't act out as the only measurement of success for this program,
yeah,
is that enough?
As long as we do not have any other measurements, and we are working on this.
Do you feel like you were born this way?
Basically, yes. Just imagine to feel whatever you may feel for women or men, to feel that romance and sexual attraction, just not to adults, but to kids.
Ooh, Max, that's tough, man.
I know.
When did you realize that you were attracted to kids?
It was around 20. It kind of shattered my whole self-image. I didn't know at that point that there was a way out.
In 2006, Max went to Dunkelfeld for a year of treatment.
Is there something you tell yourself when you see a young girl that you're attracted to?
In therapy, I learned some strategies to make myself realize what I'm feeling is very different from what the girl is feeling. I've arrived in my development at the point where I feel mostly completely normal about kids like other people would. I obviously still have the attraction, but it's on the background.
Do you think you deserve the same rights as adults who are attracted to adults?
If you exclude having sex with kids, yes.
So you should be able to live where you want to live and work where you want to work, even if it's at a preschool or elementary school?
Basically, yes. Because everything else would constitute something like thought control.
What does destigmatization look like?
If I'm pedophilically inclined and you will come over and will say to me, listen, please take care of my 5-year-old son. And I would say, no, I'm pedophilically inclined. And if you would judge this in the same way as you would judge the drug addict, then that would be a sign of destigmatization.
That's the world you want to live in?
Yes.
You got a tough job, Doc.
Yes, correct.
My name is Tea Obreht, and I'm here today talking about my new novel, Inland. I grew up watching a lot of classic Westerns because my grandparents loved them. I think one of the things that I really found myself drawn toward cracking open was this myth of the woman waiting at home. The cowboys will just walk in and they'll just be like an angry pot stirrer in the background. And if we get any sense of her, she's a broken person and everyone she knows has died. I wanted to explore the rage that must be brewing inside the pot stirrer in the corner.
You cannot speak of life in Amarga without mentioning solitude or snakes.
Inland is set in the turn of the 19th century and follows a frontierswoman in the Arizona Territory and a young outlaw named Lurie. I knew from the get-go that one of the narratives was going to span only a single day in Nora's life and the other would span decades in Lurie's. And the challenge of the book was how these disparate threads were going to be woven together. She's waiting for her husband, who's a newspaperman in town, to come back with water to revive the household, which has been parched for several days.
Life's happiness is always a famine, and what little we find interests nobody.
Lurie's on the run. He's been on the run his whole life. He finds himself on a journey with the American military in Texas in 1857. The Camel Corps, which was an experiment to bring camels over from the Middle East to serve as pack animals in the American Southwest.
What in hell were these jangling monstrosities? These big, toothy, snooted goats.
The minute I put pen to paper, an animal shows up immediately, like it's been invited in, you know. Burke the camel for Lurie represents everything. You know, he's home, he's this thing that Lurie clings to when any kind of shift happens in his life. And I think the magic of animals is that they carry on living despite all this weight from the human world.
Nameless and unburied, turned out suddenly into the bewildering dark, they rose to find themselves entirely alone.
The landscape of the West has always struck me as something that has to absolutely be haunted. If the turbulence of the West applied to its living people, it must apply to the dead too. I knew from the beginning that Lurie would see the dead, and he does from a very, very early age. They burden him with their wants. He doesn't really know how to deal with that. Nora speaks to the imagined ghost of her dead daughter all the time, and I'm very, very interested in who people are when no one's watching.
Bloodlust or mercy, the result would be the same.
This is a story about survival, for sure. The stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, even when we're wrong, about the way we revere and fear the dead, about how we justify even the worst things we end up doing as people in the context of home and family.